Hi everyone, this is Kelton here from Dutch Growers, here again at the potting desk. Today we're going to be talking about potting up plants and when you should do it and how you should do it. So first off, I have a couple plants here, this wonderful ZZ and this lipstick. And the first thing you should figure out if you need to repot is to kind of look at the plant. One thing we say here is just before you look at the roots is, does the plant look like it kind of needs to be, like there's so much plant matter in there, almost like it's walking out of the pot itself. And that's a good way to judge, maybe it does need to be repotted. The only way to tell for sure if it needs to be repotted is to look at the roots. You can sometimes tell in the bottom of the pot, especially if it's in a plastic one with a bunch of drainage holes. The bottom of this one is just, you can see a bunch of roots coming through the bottom. And this guy, there's so much roots in there. Oh, there we go. Obviously, this guy really needs to be repotted. Tons of roots just circling the bottom of that pot. So, obviously, we should repot this guy. So I'm just going to grab a pot here. The second thing you need to figure out when you're repotting is the type of pot you need. Generally, you only want to go about an inch or two larger than the current pot it's in. You can see this guy's just a little bit larger. This fits in here with some room to spare. For something like this guy, where he's got so many roots, you probably could go a little bit larger than this, but not a whole bunch more. If you go into too large of a pot, there's just so much extra soil in there and not enough roots to kind of fill that all the extra moisture sitting in that soil can kind of rot out the roots, and that's certainly not what you want. So, to pot up this guy, this pot doesn't have a drainage hole, which is not optimal, but unfortunately so many of these beautiful pots don't come with any sort of drainage, so we have to kind of make our own. So at the store here, we always add in some rocks into the bottom. You want about an inch or so of rocks in the bottom, and then we always add in a little bit extra charcoal here, which just kind of acts as a bit of a fungicide to help prevent a little more root rot. So then we got some rocks and some charcoal in there. And then just like if you saw last video, you kind of fit it in there, see how much soil you need. Put a little bit at the bottom. Got a little bit of that soil to be kind of nice and lumpy. A little bit wet. And you put it in there, firm it in, and then add soil all around. It wouldn't hurt to try and kind of rough up the roots a bit. Before you put them in, I forgot, but this guy will be fine. The ZZs don't mind being a little root bound. That's another thing you have to kind of keep in mind with your plants as you're potting them, is does this plant like to be a little root bound, or can it, does it like to keep growing and have lots of space? And that really varies from plant to plant. You can either, look it up or call at the store here, and we'd be happy to help you out with something like that. So this was just a rough pot job, but there he is in there, nice and happy, and should have lots of room to grow and hopefully throw out some more of those nice, big, beautiful green leaves. For the other guy here, the Goldfish, I picked this one on purpose because if you look at the roots, see this guy, it's got a lot of leafy material. You think maybe it does need to be repotted, but if you pop it out, take a look at the roots. There's not a ton there. It's a lot of dirt, not a ton of roots. You can see some of the feeder roots on the side. So for this guy, it doesn't really need to be potted into anything bigger. And actually doing so, potting them up when they don't need to can stress them out a bit. So sometimes we recommend just, if you still want it to look prettier than just a plain green pot, potting it up, just throwing the whole pot into something like this until it needs to be repotted. And then it doesn't have to go through extra stress when it doesn't need to. And doing this can actually be really helpful. A lot of people use a cache pot, it's called, a pot in another pot, just because it allows extra drainage in there. You can take it out and really look at it more easily than you could in something like this. But you could pot it into here. It just would stress it out a little bit, which is not really something you want to do, especially going into winter when we have less light and the plants are going to be stressed out all winter. So once you have your plant all potted up, sometimes adding some rocks or moss or something on top can make it look really nice. We always have a wide selection of different colors of rocks here, or even some natural looking or dyed moss on top can make it look nice, just a little more finished. Just kind of putting it on like that all the way around. Now the moss is something you don't really want to use on plants that like to stay dry because it holds in a lot of moisture, but otherwise on most tropicals it works pretty well. If you guys have any questions about potting up plants or how to do so, you can always stop by, shop our wide selection of pots and tropical plants, or you can visit us online at dutchgrowers.com.